Ezekiel spent the rest of the afternoon poring over his maps and nascent designs, his mind a whirlwind of schematics and contingency plans. The cable car, the sky path, dominated his thoughts. He sketched intricate diagrams of towers, calculated the tensile strength needed for the cables, a rough estimate based on his limited understanding of this world's metallurgy, and even began to conceptualize the winding mechanisms. The human-powered backup, though deemed likely to fail, still needed a detailed plan. A worst-case scenario protocol was always a necessity. He could feel the familiar thrum of the unsubmicals beneath the mansion, a constant, low hum that fueled his thoughts. It was a stark contrast to the quiet confusion emanating from Kale and Joran, who were still trying to decipher his faint parallel lines on the mountain map. Borin, after his offer of apprentices, had respectfully retreated to a corner, occasionally glancing at the maps with a furrowed brow, as if trying to mentally connect the dots between an abstract drawing and a functional skyfaring machine. As the afternoon sun began to dip, casting long shadows through the study windows, a soft knock came from the door. Young Lord Ezekiel, a servant's voice announced, "His Lordship, the Count, requests your presence in his study." Ezekiel felt a familiar surge of anticipation, tinged with a tactical evaluation of potential friction. This was the authorization protocol he needed. He gathered his various sketches and maps, carefully rolling them. "Very well," he replied, his voice calm and composed. "I shall attend him immediately." He walked towards his father's study, his small child's gait belying the immense calculating power within his mind. The mansion, or perhaps the Count's palace as he sometimes inwardly referred to it, felt larger than usual tonight, each step bringing him closer to the decision-maker. He passed through familiar corridors adorned with tapestries depicting the Count's lineage and the rich history of their lands, each thread a testament to generations of resource management and territorial control. When he entered the Count's study, the scent of parchment and a faint hint of stale ale hung in the air. Lord Riel, Count of the Red Scar, sat behind a large, ornately carved desk, illuminated by the glow of a single oil lamp. His strong, weathered face was currently creased in concentration over a stack of documents, his dark hair a little disheveled. He looked up as Ezekiel entered, a weary but affectionate smile gracing his lips. "Ezekiel, my boy," Lord Riel said, gesturing to a comfortable, oversized chair opposite him. Come in, come in. I trust your studies are progressing well." There was a slight emphasis on studies, a knowing twinkle in his eye that suggested he understood his son's intellectual pursuits went far beyond typical childish lessons. Ezekiel settled into the chair, the rolled maps clutched in his hands. "They are, Papa," he replied, choosing his words carefully. "In fact, I have a matter of some significance to discuss with you. It pertains to the optimization of our resource transport capabilities and, indeed, the future prosperity of our territory." Lord Riel raised an eyebrow, a hint of amusement playing on his features. "Optimization of resource transport, you say? That sounds remarkably like something your old father has been trying to achieve with more mundane methods." He leaned back, his gaze sharp. "Pray tell, what grand scheme has your remarkable mind conjured this time?" Ezekiel took a deep breath, his internal presentation module activating. He knew he needed to frame this not as a child's fanciful dream, but as a crucial, economically viable project. A project that would require significant capital investment and human resource allocation, but with unparalleled return on investment. "Papa," Ezekiel began, unrolling his most recent map onto the desk, its lines and notations suddenly looking far more complex under the dim lamplight. "As you know, the Red Scar is rich in valuable mineral deposits. However, the geographical constraints of the mountain make extraction efficiency incredibly low and transportation costs exceptionally high, particularly for bulky materials like raw ore and timber." He pointed to the faint, parallel lines he had drawn across the mountain range, then traced a finger from the Red Scar mine down to the nascent settlement. "My analysis indicates that our current ground-based logistics are insufficient. They are labor-intensive and highly inefficient, especially during adverse weather conditions. I propose a solution, Papa. A skypath. An automated transport solution that will revolutionize our ability to move materials." Lord Riel leaned forward, his initial amusement giving way to genuine curiosity, then a hint of concern as his son spoke of sky paths and automated solutions. He looked at the map, then at his small, intensely serious son, and waited for him to elaborate. The authorization protocol had officially begun. Ezekiel carefully unrolled another scroll, this one showing detailed, if somewhat crude, drawings of large, wheeled carts and a planned route winding through the dense forest. My initial design iteration, Papa, he explained, pointing to the drawing, involved these ground-based transport units. They were intended to be pulled by human power, supplemented by mechanical assistance like gears and pedals, similar to the initial water diversion system I devised for the mill. He tapped a section of the map where the forest was thickest. However, my environmental analysis quickly revealed significant bottlenecks. To create a road suitable for these units, we would first need to clear the vegetation. My time projection algorithm indicates that this terraforming process alone would take approximately one solar cycle, a full year, using conventional human labor methods. This time investment is a severe impediment to resource acquisition efficiency. Lord Riel's brow furrowed, his gaze shifting between the cart blueprints and the dense green on the map. A year just to cut a path, that was indeed a long time they didn't have if they wanted to capitalize on the Red Scar's potential. And even if I were to apply my elemental manipulation capabilities, Ezekiel continued, lowering his voice slightly, his eyes holding a far-off look as if accessing vast internal calculations, the energy expenditure and potential for collateral damage would be immense. To clear such a path with direct force application of unsubmicals, it could lead to unintended environmental restructuring, or even localized catastrophic events. Beyond that, even with my accelerated processing, a sustained, focused terraforming operation of that scale would still demand a significant temporal commitment from my limited processing unit, far too long to be efficient. It's an overkill solution for a suboptimal outcome. He paused, letting the implications sink in. The waste of time, the potential destruction, the drain on his own core processing. Therefore, Papa, Ezekiel concluded, placing a small, determined hand on the map's mountain range, the sky path is the superior logistical paradigm. It bypasses these terrain obstacles entirely, minimizing environmental impact and drastically reducing construction phase duration. It is the most optimized solution for our strategic resource objectives. Lord Riel watched, fascinated, as Ezekiel pointed to various sections of the rolled map, his small finger tracing lines and his golden eyes alight with a focused intensity that seemed to project vivid images directly into the air. It was a presentation so unlike any council meeting or tactical briefing he'd ever witnessed, akin to viewing a moving tapestry woven with logic and ambition. He found himself increasingly convinced by the arguments for the ground-based transport units, particularly given his son's track record with the paper mill. A year to clear the path, you say? Lord Riel mused aloud, stroking his chin. That is indeed a considerable temporal commitment, as you put it. And the risk of unintended environmental restructuring with your powers, I understand. But still, he paused, a slight frown of confusion crossing his face, it sounds like a remarkably sound plan regardless, Ezekiel. Why do you downsell what appears to be a quite marvelous undertaking? He truly saw the potential in the initial road and cart system, even with the stated drawbacks. Ezekiel merely offered a faint, almost imperceptible smile, a pre-programmed response for optimal impact. That, Papa, was merely design iteration 1.0, he stated, as if discussing a rudimentary prototype. With a flourish, he unrolled another, more simplified but equally striking, blueprint. This one depicted towering structures reaching skyward, with lines stretching between them, and small, box-like conveyances suspended from them. My optimal solution for heavy load transport and personnel mobility is this, an aerial cable transport system, Ezekiel declared, his voice gaining a new ring of conviction. He pointed to the lines connecting the towers. These sky paths will allow for the continuous movement of both raw materials, the ore from the Red Scar, and human resources, our workers, directly between the mountain peak and the processing facilities in the valley. He then gestured towards the top and bottom of his drawing. This system will be controlled from command nodes at both the upper and lower terminus points. Crucially, Papa, these transport units will require no direct manual input for their movement. Ezekiel paused, allowing that significant detail to register. Instead, they will be powered by atmospheric unsubmechanical conversion units, highly efficient mechanical systems capable of gathering the ambient mana, or unsubmechanicals from the environment and transforming it into stable kinetic energy output. This provides an automated, sustainable, and high-throughput solution with minimal operational overhead. Lord Riel's eyes widened, a mixture of profound awe and bewildered disbelief dawning in them. Automated? Mana into kinetic energy? This was far beyond even the paper mill. Ezekiel continued, oblivious to his father's dawning stupefaction. I will require the next few days to finalize the detailed engineering schematics for these conversion units and the structural integrity protocols for the towers and cables. I estimate a preparation phase of approximately 3 days, allowing for human resource acquisition by Master Borin, and perhaps there are more who can join, before I will require to be on site to commence direct supervision of the construction phase. Lord Riel was nodding, a slow, thoughtful smile spreading across his face as he absorbed the implications of an automated, sustainable, and high-throughput solution. The sky path seemed to bypass so many of the logistical nightmares he'd grappled with for years. He was clearly ready to give his authorization protocol for this grand project. Excellent, Ezekiel, he began, a rare note of genuine excitement in his voice. This is truly magnificent. A blessing, indeed. You have my full approval for this sky path of yours. Anything you need within reason, consider it done. Ezekiel's internal, strategic deployment module registered the positive feedback loop. Now for the final, critical resource allocation parameter. Then, Papa, Ezekiel stated, his golden eyes meeting his father's, I should be staying there for 7 days. At the site. To ensure optimal structural integrity and operational efficiency from the ground up. Lord Riel's head, which had been nodding in affirmation, froze mid-movement. His smile faltered, replaced by a sudden, sharp frown. He turned back, his eyes widening slightly as he processed the implications of Ezekiel's words. What? Lord Riel exclaimed, his voice cutting through the sudden silence in the study. You staying there? For 7 days? No, Ezekiel, you cannot. Ezekiel's internal processing unit registered Lord Riel's immediate and unequivocal negative input. Authorization denied. A variable I had anticipated, but one that requires immediate mitigation strategy. His primary concern is my physical vulnerability as a child. My primary concern is time optimization and project efficiency. His father's words, no, Ezekiel, you cannot, hung in the air, weighted with paternal authority. Ezekiel could see the genuine worry etched on Lord Riel's face. He perceives the remote construction site as a high-risk environment for an individual of my current physical classification. A valid data point from his perspective module, but one that conflicts with optimal project execution. The thought of the daily commute immediately brought up a fresh wave of inefficiency calculations. The transit time from the primary residence to the construction zone is approximately 1 hour on flat terrain, followed by an additional 2 hours of vertical ascent up the mountain. That's 3 hours of unproductive time per unidirectional transit, totaling 6 hours of resource expenditure for round-trip travel each operational cycle. This constitutes an unacceptable waste of temporal resources and introduces significant scheduling delays for the project timeline. He held his father's gaze, his expression unwavering, though he subtly shifted his stance, preparing his persuasion algorithm. He couldn't simply demand, he had to logically dismantle his father's objection. Papa, Ezekiel began, his voice calm, devoid of any childish petulance, I understand your concern for my well-being. However, this project is of critical strategic importance. My direct on-site presence is not a mere preference, but a fundamental requirement for successful deployment. He gestured to the maps spread on the desk. Consider the logistical inefficiencies of daily transit. The journey to the construction zone from the manor requires approximately 3 hours of unproductive movement each way. This totals 6 hours per day in transit mode. 6 hours, Papa, that could be spent optimizing construction methodologies, troubleshooting emerging issues, and performing critical system calibration. Ezekiel pressed on, preempting his father's inevitable objections. My analysis indicates that if I return to the manor nightly, we will lose nearly half of each operational day to travel. This will double the projected construction timeline and significantly increase resource expenditure due to prolonged personnel remuneration. He paused, letting the economic argument sink in. Furthermore, my direct magical supervision requires continuous environmental interaction and real-time data acquisition that cannot be replicated through periodic visits. Complex unsubmical channeling systems and structural integrity tests demand my sustained presence. He knew his father worried about his safety, his comfort. I must address the comfort and safety parameters. I assure you, Papa, the construction zone will be secure. Master Borin and his apprentices will be present, and I will maintain a constant situational awareness using my detection capabilities. For sustenance and shelter, we can establish a rudimentary habitation unit at the site, minimal but functional. It will be a controlled environment for my operational needs. His eyes gleamed with conviction. Allowing me to remain on site is not a risk amplification factor, but an efficiency multiplier, Papa. It is the only optimal pathway to ensure the project's timely and successful completion. Lord Riel's expression remained firm. Ezekiel, you speak of efficiency, but you neglect risk assessment, my boy. Borin's men are apprentices, not warriors. The woods bordering the mountains are not like our cultivated fields, they are wild, untamed. There are beasts that roam there, and, more concerningly, roving bands of those barbarians who sometimes slip through our patrols. I cannot spare a large contingent of seasoned guards to babysit a single child and a handful of smiths in such a remote, dangerous location. It is an unacceptable security vulnerability. Ezekiel, however, had already anticipated this objection protocol. His contingency plan for security parameters was already formulated. Papa, he countered, his voice steady, I propose a solution that will not only ensure my personal safety but also enhance the overall territorial defense network. Provide me with the necessary security personnel, a contingent of your soldiers, to be stationed permanently at the construction zone. He gestured to the red scar on the map. There, at the base of the primary access point, I will construct a fortified defensive structure, a fort. This strategic outpost will serve as a forward operating base for your soldiers, allowing them to patrol the region more effectively, deterring both wildlife incursions and barbarian threat vectors. And within this fortification, of course, I will establish my own habitation module, a secure room from which I can oversee the project. Lord Riel opened his mouth, likely to object to the time, resources, and sheer impossibility of building a fort in a wilderness. But Ezekiel cut him off, a confident, almost mischievous glint in his golden eyes. And Papa, Ezekiel assured him, his voice echoing with an almost casual certainty, I can build this fortified structure in one solar cycle. One day. Lord Riel stared at his 6-year-old son, his jaw slackening slightly. The scent of parchment and ale in the study seemed to thicken. One solar cycle? He repeated, his voice barely a whisper, as if the words themselves were too impossible to articulate. His eyes darted from Ezekiel's unnervingly confident gaze to the map, then back to his son. The paper mill, yes. The golden light at the temple. The coins. These were marvels, but they were creations, not instantaneous structures on such a scale. A permanent fort, built in a single day, was a concept that shattered every established law of their world, every lesson he'd ever learned about construction, labor, and time. His initial disbelief warred fiercely with the undeniable evidence of Ezekiel's previous optimizations. Could his son truly wield such power? The thought was both terrifying and intoxicating. A permanent fort, an outpost, appearing as if by magic, would secure the entire mountain pass, project their influence, and protect the very resource nodes Ezekiel had so accurately pinpointed. It would be an insurmountable strategic advantage. Yet, the paternal concern remained, a deep, primal fear. What immense energy would such a feat demand from his small boy? Was this a blessing or a burden that could break him? Ezekiel, Lord Riel said, his voice regaining some of its usual strength, though it was still tinged with profound shock. He pushed away from his desk, standing up to loom over his son. Are you certain of what you say? A fort. A fort, in one day? That is a claim that even the most powerful of mags would hesitate to utter. It would change everything. He leaned forward, his eyes boring into Ezekiel's, searching for any hint of childish fantasy. Are you truly capable of such a thing? Ezekiel held his father's intense gaze, his small form radiating an unshakable conviction. Papa, he articulated, his voice calm, my strategic defense analysis indicates we actually require 2 fortified structures for the primary aerial cable transport system, one at the lower terminus and another at the upper terminus on the mountain peak. These are critical infrastructure assets that demand uninterrupted security protocols. He then smoothly unrolled a different, larger map, laying it over the first. This one was covered in even more intricate geological markings, some annotated with Borin's familiar, rough script. Furthermore, Ezekiel continued, pointing to several newly designated areas on this map, these are not just resource nodes, these are high-value mineral assets. We will require approximately 4 additional fortified outposts to secure these mine locations. He tapped a specific spot on the map, a newly sketched area far from the original Red Scar mine. This geological anomaly here, Papa, according to Master Borin's empirical data, is rich in copper deposits. And as his historical data correlation suggests, when copper is present, there is a 70% probability of discovering silver veins and a 25% probability of gold concentrations. Lord Riel's eyes widened again, but this time with a different kind of shock, the shock of staggering potential wealth. Copper, silver, gold, it was a resource jackpot. However, Ezekiel interjected, bringing his father back to the immediate challenges. This particular resource node presents unique engineering challenges for its own transport solution. The geographical elevation is significantly higher, and the slope angle is much steeper than even the main Red Scar mountain. This makes the fortification construction for its upper terminus considerably more complex. I have no clear optimal placement for the upper defense structure there yet. Lord Riel listened, absorbing the sheer scale of his son's vision and the accompanying demands. The initial shock about a fort in a day was still lingering, but the mention of silver and gold, combined with the strategic foresight of the forts, began to outweigh his paternal anxieties. This wasn't just a project, it was a territorial expansion and wealth generation scheme of unprecedented scope, presented by his own flesh and blood. The potential was too immense to ignore. A deep sigh escaped Lord Riel, a mix of resignation, awe, and burgeoning pride. A fort in a day, 2 forts, for more. He rubbed his temples. Very well, Ezekiel. Very well. The words were a quiet surrender to the inevitable force of his son's mind. I will dispatch 80 of our best men to guard the fort, the main one, at the base of your first cable car. And I will prepare another 80 for this second mine you speak of, for whenever you are ready to begin there. He looked at the maps, then at Ezekiel, a strange, half-awed, half-worried light in his eyes. You truly are a blessing, my son. Or perhaps, something far more. Yes, Papa, Ezekiel continued, adding another layer to his request. And in addition to the security personnel, I will require the immediate allocation of lumberjack units and carpenter units. He paused, letting the words hang. I need them to manufacture a personal defense system. Specifically, a crossbow. Lord Riel blinked. His previous thoughts of grand strategy and insurmountable forts vanished, replaced by sheer bewilderment. A crossbow, he repeated, his voice laced with confusion, as if the word itself was alien. My son, we have bows. Our archers are skilled. What is this? Crossbow? How could it be better than the bows we wield for defending against barbarians or beasts, certainly not in the numbers needed for a fort? Ezekiel merely smiled, a knowing glint in his golden eyes. Papa, these are not the archaic tools you are familiar with. He produced another set of rolled blueprints, spreading them out with a practiced ease that belied his age. This, he said, pointing to the first, more compact design, is Design Alpha, the rapid-fire repeater. It is intended for close proximity engagement. Its ammunition, he paused, correcting himself. Sorry, its arrows are shorter, optimized for rapid projectile acceleration. It incorporates an integrated magazine system that auto-loads the arrows, allowing for a significantly faster rate of fire. No, sorry, I meant shooting rate. My simulation metrics indicate it can project approximately 20 arrows per 60 counts, or, as you might understand it, it can discharge 20 projectiles in roughly the time it takes to draw and release a standard bowstring 5 or 6 times. A 60 count. I really need to implement a temporal measurement standard, a solar clock or a sundial for future reference. He then moved his finger to a second drawing, a slightly larger, more robust design. This is Design Beta, the long-range striker. It was actually my initial conceptualization for a portable projectile weapon system. It lacks the magazine mechanism of the repeater, as each projectile must be manually loaded into the breech before firing sequence initiation. However, its kinetic energy output is substantially higher. The effective range is approximately 3 times that of the repeater, capable of reaching target acquisition zones where individuals would appear as mere visual pixels from the launch point if angled correctly. Finally, Ezekiel's finger landed on the largest, most imposing blueprint. It dwarfed the others, resembling a scaled-down siege weapon. And this, he announced with a flourish, is Design Gamma, the super bow. Though more accurately, it is a ballista-class projectile launcher. My inspiration for this system came directly from your soldiers' standard issue-pointed spears. This unit discharges significantly larger projectiles, effectively, very large arrows or light spears. Its operational range is extreme. It can neutralize multiple threat units if they are aligned along its trajectory path. The psychological impact alone, knowing one can be eliminated from such a distance, will be substantial, especially given the larger projectile dimension compared to standard spears. Ezekiel then pointed out the drawbacks. Its primary operational constraint is its reload cycle. It requires manual tension winding, making it the slowest rate of fire among the 3 design iterations. However, its payload capacity and impact force compensate for this temporal inefficiency. He looked up at his father, his golden eyes earnest. These weapon systems, Papa, have been inspired by the goddess Xylos, to whom I pray every night. They have never been observed within this county or, to my knowledge, this entire region. They represent a significant leap in offensive and defensive capabilities. Lord Riel stared at the blueprints, his excitement warring with a deep-seated bewilderment. He could practically envision the devastating impact of these weapons. The super bow especially, it could change the very nature of warfare in their lands. He cleared his throat, trying to compose himself. Indeed, Ezekiel. A truly remarkable set of designs. But you mentioned lumberjacks and carpenters. For the crossbows, yes, I understand the carpenters. But the lumberjacks? He tried to sound skeptical, but a tremor of eager anticipation was evident in his voice. Well, Papa, Ezekiel explained patiently, the lumberjack units are for the continuous harvesting of raw wood materials for both the ongoing Viridian optimization project, including the paper mill, and for the sustained manufacturing pipeline of these new weapon systems. The carpenter units will initially focus their fabrication skills on the easiest design, Design Beta, the manual load crossbow, to achieve immediate mass production and rapid deployment. Once they have mastered the manufacturing protocols, I will divide the carpenter units. One half will transition to the more complex Design Alpha, the rapid-fire repeater, and the other half will commence construction of the formidable Design Gamma, the super bow ballista. In this world, traditional magic follows a linear progression. techniques are learned through years of dedicated research and passed down from masters to their apprentices or students. This rigid adherence to established methods means no one challenges the conventional thought processes or approaches of their predecessors, resulting in a stagnation in the growth of their magical technology. Consequently, most practitioners expend considerable mental effort, often exploring numerous inefficient avenues to achieve a single magical objective, leading to a loss of power in the process. Ezekiel, however, employs a lateral and optimized approach to magic. He explores all possible means to achieve his goals, streamlining his thought process and method. His magic functions akin to a pre-made spell or a program, where he has trained his mind to mentally store and, magically, launch commands with a mere thought. For safety, he has consciously limited his thought process to require verbalization of the spell, without the need for traditional chanting or visual aids to minimize errors. An internal override function allows him to still execute a spell even if he is physically unable to verbalize it. This unique capability is central to Lord Riel's incredulity when Ezekiel claims he can build a fort in a single day. While Ezekiel can achieve this feat, it's not instantaneous. He requires at least a full day of preparation to mentally draw out and prepare all the necessary commands. This includes intricate details such as the fort's area, shape, wall designs, defense towers, and various internal structures like offices, soldiers' rooms, a jail, lavatories, royal bedrooms, mess halls, kitchens, stables, blacksmith workshops, and carpenters' shops. His mental preparations also encompass critical defensive systems, water supply, sewage, and future upgrade areas for lights and water systems. All this meticulous planning occurs through lucid dreaming, where his spiritual body actively works while his physical body rests. The departure day dawned with the familiar parental lectures from both his mother and father, each a predictable safety protocol that delayed his operational deployment. Ezekiel, despite his internal impatience, endured the verbal input with a practiced stoicism. They finally arrived at the foot of the mountain at approximately 0800 hours, a temporal deviation that caused Ezekiel to frown inwardly. Arrival time suboptimal. My project timeline has already incurred a delay penalty of several time units. Borin, ever the local domain expert, gestured to a familiar spot. This is where we always come in, young lord. It's safe. Ezekiel, however, had already factored in superior strategic placement. We cannot establish base here, he declared, his voice firm. This ingress point is suboptimal for the cable car's lower terminus. Its elevation profile is too direct for efficient cable trajectory. He led them further back, his golden eyes scanning the terrain until they found a slightly higher, flatter expanse, a plateau equivalent that his geological analysis deemed ideal. The first aerial cable transport system would be dedicated to personnel mobility, he decided, marking its intended entry point. He then moved to designate the location for the core collector cable car, a separate system for the ore. But all deployment had to wait. He had a commitment protocol to fulfill, the fort. Fortification construction takes precedence. My time projection for its completion remains 1 day, despite this unforeseen operational delay. He began the fortification construction with an internal command. The fort itself was designed as a 6-point star configuration, a defensive template he intended to replicate for all future strategic outposts. Encircling the primary perimeter was a circular moating system, approximately 12 feet deep. With his earth magic, the ability to manipulate the very ground, converting it into a bedrock consistency, he compacted the moat's base. This material transformation would prevent water absorption into the soil, ensuring the moat remained a formidable liquid barrier. Next came the climatic regulation system. He integrated several air inlet ducts into the design, with internal piping networks running beneath the fort's structural foundation in a circular pattern before resurfacing. These atmospheric exchange conduits were preparatory for the internal rooms, serving as exhaust ports for a rudimentary climate control system. His intent was to maintain an optimal internal temperature between 24 and 27 degrees Celsius, providing environmental comfort regardless of seasonal fluctuations. The fort's walls rose swiftly, approximately 1 meter thick. The construction material comprised self-locking bricks, similar in interlocking design to Earth's Lego blocks, ensuring both structural integrity and ease of future repair protocols. 12 meters beyond the first, a second identical wall began to materialize, then a third. The multi-layered defensive strategy was clear. If an external breach occurred in one wall, the defending units could retreat to an inner perimeter, creating a containment zone and a restricted movement ambush environment for any invading units. The waste management system was meticulously designed with a dual redundancy protocol. While Ezekiel possessed the magical purification capability to instantly sanitize bio-waste, he integrated a manual maintenance override. Cleanliness is godliness, as the ancient wisdom database asserts. What if magical maintenance personnel are unavailable for scheduled purification protocols? This system allowed for physical intervention should the need arise. The effluent output would be directed towards a natural topographical depression at a lower elevation, a basin Ezekiel planned to later transform into a contained hydrological feature, a lake. The primary wastewater treatment occurred beneath the entire fortification footprint. The fort, with a total land area of approximately 21 hectares, was not excessively expansive by his previous world's architectural standards, but it served as an optimal foundational phase. At the precise geometric center of the fort's inner circle, a grand focal point materialized, a towering statue of the goddess Xylos, depicted standing majestically atop a massive globe. From the globe beneath her feet, a continuous hydroflow emerged, cascading into a pristine collection pool below. This aquifer access point, a subterranean water source, would supply the moating system. The globe itself was a concealed fluid transfer pump, cleverly disguised. The statue, while serving as a functional pump housing, was primarily for aesthetic enhancement and to provide a designated spiritual reverence point for the fort's occupants. The water source for consumption protocols will be a separate ingestion system to prevent cross-contamination variables. The goddess Xylos statue, a majestic aesthetic and functional centerpiece, served as the nucleus around which the central administrative complex would be constructed. The central core of this circular building remained open to the sky, maximizing natural light penetration during daylight hours, as the building deliberately lacked a central roof. An ingress-egress archway provided access to the fountain area, creating an optical illusion when viewed from the exterior. The inner archway appeared significantly smaller, making the fountain seem distant. This effect was achieved by the larger dimensions of the outer archway and the intentional constriction and lack of illumination of the pathway leading to the fountain, a purposeful architectural manipulation akin to the visual deception employed in Earth's Taj Mahal. All these intricate architectural deployments transpired not over a full day, but within mere hours, thanks to Ezekiel's pre-programmed construction protocols. His magical programming was not spaghetti code, but a highly organized, linear phased execution sequence. Once the primary defensive parameters, the fort's gate and drawbridge, were completed, the expedition team finally moved inside. Ezekiel immediately began providing operational instructions to the guards regarding the drawbridge mechanism, a novel technological implementation for them. He then elucidated the purpose and function of the portcullises and their operational procedures. Following this, he explained the defensive exploitation protocols for the multi-layered wall system in the event of an imminent or actual breach. The fort's smithy, however, proved to be the most captivating point of interest for the assembled group. Ezekiel guided them through the ore purification zones, showcasing the advanced furnaces and the integrated forge facilities. The expedition team remained in a state of profound ore-induced immobility, taking an extended temporal interval to even enter the fort. Ezekiel, recognizing the operational delay, had to raise his voice to compel them into movement. The remainder of the day was dedicated to personnel acclimatization. Potable water for consumption and ablution was readily available via a distributed plumbing network. This system sourced its water from an atmospheric moisture collection array that stored the purified liquid in 6 massive water towers, tanks, approximately 100 feet tall with a 36 square foot area, spread evenly along the circumference of the central building. From these elevated storage units, gravity-fed distribution then supplied water throughout the entire fortification complex. Ezekiel had even integrated personal hygiene units, showers, with temperature regulation modules to prevent thermal extremes regardless of seasonal climate fluctuations.